Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. In Europe, the number of deaths from the new coronavirus has now crossed 100,000. Meanwhile, in the US, nearly 1,900 have died overnight as hundreds of Americans staged protests against the lockdowns in several cities. Globally, infection cases have exceeded 2.3 million, with nearly 161,000 fatalities. More in this report.
Europe now accounts for nearly two-thirds of the coronavirus fatalities worldwide. Experts says the number of confirmed infections is likely to be a fraction of actual cases, as many countries are testing only the most critical people. Italy and Spain remain the hardest hit in Europe, with the most number of deaths in the region. Germany has reported 184 new deaths in the past 24 hours, while in Turkey, the number of confirmed cases has overtaken neighboring Iran for the first time. In Britain, the rapid swell of the outbreak has overwhelmed the national health services.
We've got to do more to get the PPE that people need to the front line. This is an extremely challenging situation. As you say, there's massive global demand for the equipment. This is a global pandemic, but we are trying to do everything we can to get the equipment that we need.
In the US and Brazil, hundreds of people have taken to the streets calling for authorities to resign over lockdown measures. But New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says data will dictate the strategy, not whims and wishes.
I think the president leaving it to the states was not just right and legal and constitutional. I think he's right that it's different in different places. Look, when we look at this state and we talk about reopening, we're going to talk about different strategies in different parts of the state because the numbers dictate the strategy, and you have different numbers in different parts of the state.
Meanwhile, in South Korea, the number of infection cases has fallen for the first time to a single digit since the outbreak peaked in February.
Pakistan has reported 514 coronavirus infections in the past 24 hours, taking the total number of cases to almost 8,000. The health ministry said 159 people have died across the country, with 16 deaths reported since yesterday. The ministry said 63% of the infections are locally transmitted. The ministry said 1,868 people have recovered, while 47 patients are in critical condition. Meanwhile, the UK has announced financial support worth £2.67 million to Pakistan in the fight against the pandemic. British High Commissioner to Pakistan, Christian Turner, said the support is aimed at seriously ill and stronger testing system. Anti-Muslim sentiments have intensified across India, with media and the government accusing Muslims of spreading the COVID-19 virus. In another incident, a cancer hospital in Uttar Pradesh refused to accept Muslim patients unless they come in with a negative coronavirus test. In a newspaper advertisement, the hospital said the step has been taken for the security of the medical staff and the doctors. The hospital claims the number of virus patients has grown unexpectedly due to the Tablighi Jamaat gathering in New Delhi. The Indian Health Ministry has so far recorded 521 deaths and more than 16,000 coronavirus infections across the country. US President Donald Trump has warned China of consequences if it was knowingly responsible for the novel coronavirus pandemic. In a White House briefing, President Trump said such doubts have put a question mark over US relations with China. Trump also said Washington has good relations with both North Korea and Russia, saying US would have been at war with Pyongyang if he was not the president. The president said he doesn't foresee an increase in military tension with Moscow, not so much with Beijing. He said it is yet to be seen if COVID-19 in China mistakenly got out of control, or was it done deliberately.
If they were knowingly responsible, certainly. If it was a mistake is a mistake. But if they were knowingly responsible, yeah, then there should be consequences. You're talking about, potentially lives like nobody's seen since 1917.
Iran says it will give a decisive response to any mistake by the United States in international waters. In a statement, the Revolutionary Guard said the U.S. must follow maritime protocols. They also dismissed U.S. reports of harassment by Iranian vessels as fake. Earlier, the U.S. military said 11 Iranian vessels came too close to the U.S. guard ships in the Gulf, calling the move dangerous and provocative. Tensions soared in the region after a U.S. airstrike in Baghdad killed Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani earlier this year. Iran retaliated by firing a dozen ballistic missiles at Iraqi bases housing U.S. troops. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif will leave for Damascus tomorrow to hold talks with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Abbas Mousavi said Zarif will also meet his Syrian counterpart during the one-day visit. In a statement, Mousavi said Zarif and the Syrian officials will discuss mutual ties and the regional fight against terrorism. Earlier, Iran's foreign ministry said Assad had emphasized on talks between Tehran and Damascus on recent developments. The ministry said Tehran has reiterated its support for the Republic of Syria. The Afghan government says its security forces have retaken Khumab district from the Taliban in northern Jozjan province. A provincial governor spokesman said 14 Taliban fighters, including their shadow deputy governor, were killed in the operation. The official said 10 other Taliban have been wounded in the operation, while one truck was seized from the fighters. He said another operation by security forces is underway in Karkin district of the same province. Earlier, National Security Council spokesperson Javed Faisal alleged Taliban have killed 24 civilians in the last week. He said fighters wounded 13 others, including women and children, across the country. The Taliban have not commented over any development yet. Libya's internationally recognized government says its forces have captured 102 fighters loyal to Commander Khalifa Haftar. They also seized heavy military equipment. GNA military said it has also captured areas of Al-Tawaisha and Salahuddin south of Tripoli. In another statement, the forces said they carried out 17 airstrikes on the strategic town of Taruna. Taruna is a major focal point for Haftar's militias in their onslaught against Tripoli. The UN-backed government launched Operation Peace Storm on March the 26th to counter Haftar's offensive. In Mali, people are voting in the final round of the legislative polls despite concerns of the coronavirus and militant threats. The elections have been repeatedly delayed as the country struggles with the militant revolt. Voters in the nation of the 19 million are casting their ballots in the runoff to elect 147 members of the National Assembly. The first round on March the 29th was disrupted by militant attacks and intimidation, including the kidnapping of opposition leader Soumaïla Cissé. The country has been plagued by conflict since 2012, when the rebels captured much of the Mali's arid north. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro says the legislative elections this year may be pushed back due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In a radio interview, Maduro said the fight against the outbreak is a priority and it is unwise to insist on scheduled polls under these circumstances. When asked about accepting aid from Colombia, Maduro said Venezuela will welcome anything that helps the health of citizens. Venezuela has so far reported 227 cases of COVID-19 and 9 deaths from the disease. In Indonesia, 9 people have died in a landslide at an illegal gold mine in the western Sumatra province. Officials said a group of 12 people, including a woman, were digging for gold at an abandoned mine in South Solok. District spokesman said 3 people keeping the watch reported to local authorities when the group failed to emerge from the mine. He said the bodies of deceased have been removed from the scene. The spokesperson said the victims were local farmers digging the gold without proper equipment or protective gear. In Ukraine, after being extinguished twice, radioactive wildfires around the defunct Chernobyl nuclear plant are raging again. The Interior Ministry says over 1,800 firefighters and 300 units of equipment are working in Kiev and Zhytomyr regions. Police said a huge fire was started by arsonists in the forests around Chernobyl earlier this month. It was put out this week, but new blazes broke, fanned by heavy winds. Ukraine's health ministry says there is no new radiation risk as yet from the fires and pollution. The raging fires have pushed pollution levels in Kiev to the worst in the world. Welcome back. The Pentagon will extend the travel ban on service members to June 30th due to the novel coronavirus pandemic. During a briefing, an official said the new order, which is yet to be signed, includes eased restrictions and exemptions. The official said Defense Secretary Mark Esper will review the policy every 15 days. The original 60-day stop movement order was put in place last month in an attempt to curb the spread of the coronavirus among troops. It was set to expire on May the 11th. The Pentagon remains concerned about asymptomatic cases among the nearly 3,000 US troops that have tested positive so far. Health authorities in Middle Eastern countries have reported new cases of COVID-19 and deaths from the viral infection. Details in this report.
Qatar has confirmed 345 new coronavirus cases, bringing the total to 5,008. The Gulf country has also reported 1 death and 46 recoveries. Kuwait recorded 93 new virus cases, taking its tally to 1,751. The Lebanese Health Ministry reported 4 new cases, raising the total to 672. Palestine recorded 1 coronavirus death and 6 new cases. Oman registered 111 new cases, with its total reaching 1,180. Israel has recorded 7 new deaths and 125 new cases, bringing the total to 13,107 infected. On Friday, Saudi Arabia carried out mass testing in high-density areas, finding 400 new cases, bringing the total number of infections in the country to 7,142.
The World Health Organization says the rapid spread of COVID-19 in Africa over the past week is worrisome. Director General of WHO, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, has urged the international community to support Africa to combat the crisis. More in this report.
The WHO said there has been a 51% increase in the number of reported cases in Africa over the past week. It added there has been a 60% increase in the number of reported deaths. Sudan's health ministry said 30 new cases were reported over the past 24 hours, bringing the total number to 66 with 10 deaths. Ghana's information ministry said COVID-19 statistics are at 641 with 5 new cases recorded and 8 deaths. The Nigerian president's chief of staff, Abba Kyari, died on Friday after contracting the new coronavirus. The national tally in Nigeria hits 493 as national testing strategy rolled out in the country. In Cameroon, there have been 922 cases and 21 deaths, but many fear the real number of confirmed cases is more than 1,000. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention said it planned to distribute 1 million COVID-19 test kits in the continent. The organization said kits will be distributed in the next week to help African countries address the shortfall.
In Palestine, a group of volunteers have turned a bicycle into a mobile library for children under lockdown in Deir al-Balah. Details in this report.
Lockdown measures continue to be implemented across Palestine, much like rest of the world. Like elsewhere, children are cooped up in their homes. Without school, they have no access to libraries or books. One group of volunteers decided to do something about this by starting a mobile library service on a bicycle. After disinfecting themselves and their bike, they packed books, crafts and toys into a gift box and distributed to children.
If the children couldn't come, we wanted to go to them. We turned the bike into a mobile library.
One of the volunteers, Osame Fayyad, says that they want to provide psychological support to children during the stressful lockdown.
In this way, children do not get away from books. The project also provides psychological support to children who are at home.
According to the Palestinian Health Authority, the number of people infected with COVID-19 is on the rise. The country has reported 418 confirmed cases and 2 deaths from the virus.
The effects of the coronavirus crisis are threatening traditional food supply chains in Mexico. The production of nopal or prickly pear cactus is dwindling in the country. More in this report.
Nopal is a staple of Mexican food, used in everything from tacos to salads or as a side dish to accompany meat. Grown on hillsides of extinct volcanoes in southern Mexico City, farmers are finding it necessary to grind up their harvest to use as mulch.
Yes, the coronavirus emergency has affected sales, and many people have abandoned their noble fields, and others are cutting them up. And the few that have them are selling this week since the price recovered a bit.
The main cause of the decline in production is the lack of customers coming to the vegetable market in Milpa Alta, a borough of Mexico City.
In my case, I stopped coming for about 20 days because of the coronavirus. But we need things, so we had to come again and sell. And there's little movement, meaning there are not many customers because people in the city are not coming out to buy.
Mexico's economy has been battered by the coronavirus outbreak, and many are struggling to make ends meet as the country heads into its harshest recession in living memory. Health officials have reported more than 7,400 cases of novel coronavirus and 650 deaths so far.
Well, some of the biggest names in music have joined forces to celebrate healthcare workers in a globally televised concert. Lady Gaga, Paul McCartney and Billie Eilish were among more than 100 artists who performed songs from their living rooms. The Rolling Stones managed to play it together from 4 separate locations. The 8-hour show also featured real life stories from those on the front line of the fight against COVID-19. Lady Gaga, who curated the lineup, called the event a love letter to the world. Titled One World Together at Home, the concert was organized by the Global Citizen Movement and the World Health Organization. Proceeds from the concert will go to the COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund for the WHO. The UAE and other Gulf markets have started the week on a higher note, led by a jump in Dubai bourse and Abu Dhabi index. The positive sentiments on the regional bourses were on the back of gains in the US stocks on Friday. Dubai stocks led the way with 3.5% over gains made by property stocks. Abu Dhabi was up by more than 2.5%, led by Ishraq Investment, Abu Dhabi Shipbuilding and First Abu Dhabi Bank. Saudi Arabia's Tadawul, the largest bourse in the Gulf region, was also up 0.5% after opening. Bursa Kuwait also made a strong start to the week, rising almost 1.5%. Qatar Stock Exchange too gained over 1%, while Bahrain index was nearly unchanged. The European Central Bank says it will take further action to keep prices stable, if necessary, amid COVID-19 pandemic. In an interview, ECB policymaker François Villeroy said the bank has the mandate to ensure price stability under the EU treaties. Villeroy said with inflation below ECB's 2% target, the bank will have to keep interest rates low and liquidity abundant. Meanwhile, Germany says it may be able to manage the fiscal impact of the pandemic without exceeding approved debt levels. Germany's finance minister Olaf Scholz said the silver lining depends on the economy recovering in the second half of the year. Meanwhile, Eurozone bailout fund says Europe will need $543 billion to finance recovery, in addition to the agreed $587 billion. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.